everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Suzy and I am overheating. Today I'm bringing you the mid-year book Freakout tag, more like a mid-ish year book Freakout tag, to be honest. As we're filming, it is nearly the end of July, so better late than never, right? This tag was originally created by Jamie and I will link her channel in the description box down below. It is hella hot here today, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm fanning or sweating my makeup off, or I just abandon this entirely and come back at a later point when it's cooler. I'm British, I'm not built for heat. You might be not unreasonably wondering why I'm dressed all in black in that case, and the answer to that is simple. Emo's not dead, it's not dead. But anyway, let's get on with it before I melt. Question number 1, is your favourite book of the year so far? And for me, that is The Hobbit. So this year I picked up The Hobbit for the first time since I was a kid. We're talking 25 some odd years ago. It's been a minute. And upon rereading this, I had some serious revelations. It turns out that this is not just my favourite book of the year. This is my favourite book ever. Like, I finally found it. It was here all along. Who knew? In case you don't know much about The Hobbit, I'll give you a really quick synopsis. It follows Bilbo, who is a hobbit from the Shire who loves nothing more than his creature comforts. But when adventure comes knocking on his door one day in the form of 13 dwarves and an old codger of a wizard called Gandalf, Bilbo gets swept along on the adventure of his lifetime. Whilst the dwarves try to reclaim their most prized talisman and their ancestral home under the Lonely Mountain from a fearsome dragon called Smaug, Bilbo lurches from one near miss to another. Along the way, he comes across a curious creature called Gollum and an even more curious ring. This is a classic within the genre, and it is a shining example of how to build a fantasy world and story. It is so richly imagined and beautifully realised, and it captured me wholeheartedly as a little girl, and as it turns out, it never let me go. So reading this as a kid, I had no idea how much of an impact it was really having on me, but looking back now with that hindsight, I can see that I have subconsciously been rating every fantasy book I have ever read against this one. No doubt my childhood love of this book has had an influence on its position as my favourite book of all time, but isn't that the point? Like, aren't you supposed to just really, truly love a book in order for it to be your favourite? I do, of course, recognise, though, that love isn't always rational, and perhaps not everybody else would put this book on quite the same pedestal that I do, but my own love for it, it knows no bounds. So far this year, I have given out 14 5-star ratings, so there were quite a few to choose from, but I can hardly say that a book is my favourite book of all time and then not pick it as my favourite book of the year. So, question 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far this year? And for me, it is The Hod King by Josiah Bancroft. So The Hod King is book 3 in Bancroft's The Tower of Babel series, and this one was a decider for me. So I had obviously read books 1 and 2 leading up to this, and I'd been a bit underwhelmed. It was kind of middle of the road, and I wasn't convinced the series was going to push forward any further. So this was make or break, and holy bananas was it make. It is obviously quite difficult to give you any details about the plot for this one without accidentally spoiling the first 2 books in the series, so I'll just give you a brief synopsis of the series as a whole. This series follows Senlin, who is a very mild-mannered teacher who hasn't got an adventurous bone in his body. Senlin is recently married, and smitten ain't the word. His lovely wife has managed to convince him to take their honeymoon at the infamous Tower of Babel, which is an incredible tourist attraction full of mystery and wonder and once-in-a-lifetime experiences. The tower is so tall that it disappears into the clouds, and each layer of the tower is made up of ringdoms. They're individual cities that are circular, and they are almost completely self-contained from one another. Each ringdom is bizarre in its own way, but as you go further up the tower, it becomes more and more convoluted. Now, the general rule of thumb is that the higher up you are, the more powerful the ringdom is. But there's a catch. Ascending the tower is nigh on impossible, despite the fact that everybody goes there to do just that and to see all the many wonders that the tower can offer. Hardly anybody ever manages it. First, you have to survive the chaos of the market that surrounds the base of the tower. Now, people go missing there almost constantly, and their loved ones can spend the rest of their life searching for him. Others just give up. Assuming you make it to the tower, you then have to negotiate your way through each of these ringdoms, and to do that you have to avoid the myriad webs of political intrigue that exist there, and you have to try and avoid becoming condemned into slavery for the tower as what's known as a hod. It helps to have money or powerful friends in high places if you want to ascend the tower, and of course Senlin has neither. But no matter who you know, that tower is rotten to the core. It is completely corrupt. So when Senlin's wife goes missing within the first few minutes of their honeymoon, he knows that he might never see her again, but goddamn if he isn't going to do his best to try and find her. So begins the tale of an incredibly unlikely hero as he faces down all the odds. One of the most satisfying things about this series is Senlin's character arc, and it is in this book that we see him finally reach the peak of that. Plus the plot, which had been dragging for me through books 1 and 2, really started to thicken in this one, and there were so many revelations. Plus the pacing and the world building in this one could have won the most improved award. There was literally a world of difference. My overall feeling after reading this one was that this series was finally starting to fulfill all of its potential. I gave it all the stars and it deserved every single one of them. Question 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet. And so it's a Master of Gin by P. Jenny Clark. I mean, I don't know if I even want to talk about it anymore. So funny story. I had originally gone to pre-order this one for its release date in May. But then I held off and thought, oh, I might get it for my birthday, which was in April. And I didn't get it, which serves me right, doesn't it? So when I then went to pre-order this after my birthday had been and gone, all of the hardback covers had sold out. I couldn't find one anywhere for love nor money, as it turned out. I had both and I had no book. So I had to pre-order the paperback version, which doesn't come out until August. As it turns out, hardbacks are now available again, and so I could cancel my pre-order and just order the damn thing and have it right now and immediately read it. But I have tried in the past to cancel pre-orders. It's never worked. Despite several very long conversations with Amazon, books just show up anyway, so I figured I'm just going to wait for the paperback now. It's not as if I haven't got a TBR that's breaking my shelves anyway, so I might as well just hold on. But I am desperate to read this book. Everybody else has read it. Everybody's putting all these reviews on BookTube, and I feel left out. So let's hope it's really good, because if it's not, I'm going to be so pissed. I have every faith though, it's Jenny Clark, like it's going to be amazing. In case you are unfamiliar, A Master of Gin is the first full-length novel in Jenny Clark's Dead Gin universe. It features Fatima El-Shawari, who is hands down one of my favourite all-time female lead characters. She is surrounded by a cast of incredibly strong characters anyway, and the world building is exceptional. I am so excited for this, I'm sure you can tell. But I've been waiting so long to get back into this reimagined Cairo. It's sort of steampunk, it's all amazing. It is set at the beginning of the 20th century. There's destructive gods, there's magic. It's so incredible, and I'm so jealous of everyone else who has already read it. Let's just move away from that one because I might cry if I have to keep talking about it. And the fact that I haven't read it yet. The other new release that I really need to get to this year is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Gwynne is one of my favourite fantasy authors of all time. I fell in love with his storytelling when I read the Faithful and the Fallen series by him. It is one of my favourite series of all time. I adore it, and I really have been craving a bit of Gwynne's writing. This is a completely new series. This is the very first book in it. It sounds epic. Again, everybody else seems to have read this one so far, and all the reviews I'm seeing for it have been incredibly positive. I know already that I'm going to love it because I love Gwynne's writing. So it's just a case of getting to it. The Shadow of the Gods is a Viking-inspired epic fantasy story, and it is book 1 of the Bloodsworn saga. Gwyn is a master of the multi-POV fantasy story and of constructing incredible fantasy worlds. I cannot wait to go on a brand new adventure with his writing. There are so many others that I could have mentioned, including Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell, The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo, Soraland by Rivers Solomon, Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor, and The Coward by Stephen Iron. There have been so many incredible sounding books released this year, and I'm just so genuinely excited by all of them. Mate, if only there were more hours in a day. Question 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of 2021. And again, there are so many. There are just so many. I don't know when I'm going to find the time, but I'm going to find it. A very recent one is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This has only just been released in July, and I'm desperate to get my hands on it. But let's be real, even if I was to buy it right now, I probably wouldn't be reading it until this time next year with the amount of books that I've got to get through. I'll tell you all about it later, but yeah, safe to say there's quite a few. In August, we'll get Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. September sees Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead and Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. And in November, we will get The Bone Shard Emperor by Andrea Stewart, and my most anticipated one of all, which is The Fall of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. It is the 4th and final instalment in that series. Question 5 is your biggest disappointment of the year, and this one, it was a toss-up for me between The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells and The Girl and the Stars by Mark Lawrence. I talked about both of these in depth. It was so long. But I talked about them both in my June wrap-up, which I will go ahead and link in case you are particularly interested in all the many, many thoughts I had on both of these. But safe to say, they were both huge letdowns for me. In fairness to The War of the Worlds, I think I had just built that up to be something so spectacular in my head that it never really had a chance. But The Girl and the Stars had every chance. I had loved another one of Lawrence's series, The Book of the Ancestor, and because this was set in the exact same world, I thought I could then expect the same level of world building and plot and character development, and no. None of those. None of the above. Still, it gives me an answer to questions like this, so I can't be too mad about it. Question 6 is your biggest surprise of the year, and for this I have gone for The Egg by Andy Weir. This is a short story from Weir, and it is freely available online, and it is 3 pages long. I remember writing in my Goodreads review that I have written longer shopping lists, and goddamn if that ain't still the truth. This blew me away. It was short, but it was so profound, and I just... my mind boggled. So the concept for this one wasn't particularly original, but it was very well done. In such a short space, Weir gave me a fully developed scene. He even gave me character development, and most importantly of all, he hit me right in the feels. I enjoyed this so much more than I ever thought I would, and just the fact that it was done so efficiently, huge surprise. Question 7 is your new favourite author, either a debut author or an author that is new to you. And I have gone for Ken Liu and S.A. Chakraborty. I couldn't pick between them. They've both blown me away this year. So both of these authors are new to me rather than debut authors. In fact, Ken Liu, for example, is incredibly well established as a fantasy and sci-fi author, also as a translator for Chinese works, including things like The Three-Body Problem. So I first picked up The Paper Menagerie and other stories from him, and it did the impossible. It made me fall in love with it. And the reason why that's so impressive is because I am the self-proclaimed nemesis of short stories, and this is a short story anthology. I mean, notwithstanding The Egg, obviously that's another short story that I really liked, but generally speaking, I don't like short stories. Within a week or so of finishing The Paper Menagerie, I then went on to pick up another one of Liu's short story anthologies, which was The Hidden Girl and Other Stories. This one was more sci-fi focused, and although it wasn't quite as successful for me, it was still incredibly solid, and it dealt with one of my favourite sci-fi storylines, which is artificial intelligence. What is so very impressive about Liu's writing to me, though, is that it is incredibly lyrical, but it's also really succinct. That might sound like an oxymoron, but trust me when I say it isn't in terms of his writing. If you've read from him before, you'll probably know exactly what I mean. He does not waste words, and everything he writes is with very clear purpose, but it's just still so beautiful somehow. The thing that he excels at, though, are his concepts. They are mind-blowing. I can't recommend his works highly enough. So despite the fact that she's no longer a debut author, I did read S.A. Chakraborty's debut, which is The City of Brass. It is book 1 in the Daevabad trilogy. And again, just, such an incredible first book. I didn't realise it was a first book. It was that good. Chakraborty's world building and character development are so exceptional. She creates this world that is incredibly easy just to get lost in, and that's exactly what I did. As soon as I finished The City of Brass, I went straight into the Kingdom of Copper, and I rounded it out in the Empire of Gold. Within a week of each other, I did all 3 books. I couldn't put them down, and I didn't want to put them down. I didn't want to come away from Daevabad and the world that she had created. The Daevabad trilogy is now one of my favourite fantasy series of all time. Cannot recommend it highly enough, and it is safe to say that both she and Kenlu are now also by authors for me. Question 8 is your newest fictional crush. Now, I know that this isn't something everybody experiences, but I crush and I crush hard. I've gone for Dara from the Daevabad trilogy because apparently I like my men emotionally unavailable and deeply, deeply scarred. Also maybe Senlin from Senlin Ascends because, I mean, he has a glow up, that's for damn sure, but I liked him before that as well when he was, quite bookish and a bit quiet, and I mean, he's very trusting, which makes him make some really stupid decisions early on, but anyone who knows me will tell you that I'm prone to the exact same things, so I don't know, maybe we're just kindred spirits, I guess. Question 9 is your newest favourite character, and again, I couldn't decide, so I've cheated and I've gone with 3 different ones. Betty from Rat Queens, Rocky from Project Hail Mary, and Jane from Jane Eyre. So I mentioned both Betty and Jane in my June wrap-up, so I will do my best to keep my gushing about them to a minimum in this bit. Both of them are strong female characters, but I've got to say they could not be more different in every other way. Betty is a good time girl. She gets in fistfights a lot of the time, and she uses the fact that everybody around her underestimates her to her advantage. She is raucous and rough around the edges, but she's also really sweet and kind, and she's just incredibly memorable. Jane is my new hero. I wish I had her intelligence and her tenacity and her tact. She's gracious and she's giving, and I want to be her when I grow up. Rocky's character was a revelation in more ways than one. If you've read it, you'll know exactly what I mean. And if you're yet to, be prepared. But he was a breath of fresh air and I loved him. He is so resourceful and he has the most can-do attitude that I have ever come across. He handedly deals with every impossible problem that's thrown at him, and he just does it all with such a smile and such positivity. I mean, it's a bit far-fetched at times, if I'm honest, of course it is, but I think it's his level of skill and just his positive mental attitude that just makes anything seem believable. But the thing I loved the most about Rocky is his loyalty and his capacity for hope. He was a shining light and he made that book for me. Question 10 is a book that made you cry, and I am a crier, so there were a few. I mean, I cry at everything. I cry at cute baby animals. I cry at really cute adverts, all the Christmas ones, they get me every year. I cry when someone says something nice to me. I cry all the time. So you can bet that there were a few options, but I ultimately went for Beloved by Toni Morrison. This book broke me. I don't know that I will ever get over this book. The story follows Sethi, who is haunted by her traumatic past and the things that she's been driven to do out of pure desperation. Oh man, this book, it is a sledgehammer to the heart. I can't even begin to comprehend the enormity of emotion involved in this one, but from what little I can understand of it as a mother who would do anything to protect her child, it was devastating. I had often heard of Toni Morrison and I knew how respected and loved she was as a writer, but I had never read anything of hers until this, and now I get it. She was an incredible talent. This, as I am sure you can tell, is not an easy book to read, but it is so important and worthwhile. yeah, it's so powerful. So to lighten the mood a little bit, question 11 is a book that made you happy. I went for The Lost Boys Volume 1 by Tim Seeley. Of course I did. I talked about this one in my June wrap-up, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts and feelings about this book, there were many feelings, all of them good, then definitely go and check that out. But safe to say, I bloody loved it. This is the sequel to the Lost Boys movie, which is one of my all-time favourites. I mean, I don't know what to say. It has hands down been the book that has made me the happiest all year, if not ever. It was the fact that it did one of my favourite ever franchises justice. It's so rare for that to happen. Normally things tend to let them down, and you know, this had such a special place in my heart. It would have been so easy to just ruin it for me, and I did anything but. I haven't been able to get the grin off my face every time I talk about it ever since I read it. So the comic book picks up from the end of the movie, but it can be read as a standalone. It will tell you everything you need to know about the movie plotline in the comics, so don't worry if you haven't seen it. Although, to be fair, it would be so much better if you have. You will only love it all the more if you've got that context from the movie too. I can't tell you much about this one without spoiling the plot of the movie a little bit, but I can tell you that it is about the hunt for an ancient vamp city, and that no stereos are harmed in the making of this one. Question 12 is the most beautiful book you have bought or received this year, and I am very fortunate to be able to say that I got a bunch. First off, I picked one that I know won't be to everybody's taste, but which I just think is stunning, and that's Ring Shout by PJ Clark. I love the boldness of this and the graphic nature of the design, and just the fact that it's shouting from my shelf. I think it's brilliant. I love the colours in this, and it's giving me such creepy vibes, which is spot on because this one is a horror story. I'm yet to read this one, but it is the inimitable PJ Clark, so I have no doubt I'm going to love it. Also, I won this one in a bet with Andy, so. I also picked out The Way of X issue 1, which is still in its plastic cover, hence why it's so shiny in my ring light. So it's a bit distracting, but I love the artwork on this, and I really love the colour palette as well. It's not often that you see such sort of punchy action scenes in pastel colours, but I'm here for it. Shout out as well to Willow. Look. Isn't it beautiful? Willow is my favourite anyway, so, but oh. This is the Boom Studios Buffy reboot, which is bringing Buffy into the 21st century, which it's not the most perfect story in terms of plotline. I've read about halfway through the series so far. There's a crossover event. It all got a bit confusing. I'm yet to dive back in. But I loved the first issue, which is High School is Hell. Adored that. It went a bit downhill in the following few issues, but what they have done with this reboot is that they have also taken up Willow's storyline and Angel's as well. Obviously, if you were a fan of the show, you know that Angel had his own spin-off show anyway. All of the storylines are interconnected. There's even an Angel and Spike issue, and there is Hellmouth and Chosen Ones as well. So I have all of them on my shelf so far. This is the latest release. But before I carry on too much about that, just look at it. Oh. And also for my Robin Hobb collection, I got the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, which is these three, and look. Ooh, shady. I love them. I mean, it sort of irks me a little bit that these aren't quite in keeping with the rest of the series because they all sit on the shelf together. But I'm a sucker for a bit of foiling. And finally, question 13 is, what books do you really need to read before the end of the year? And I have gone with a couple of fantasy heavy hitters, the first of which is the Raven Shadow trilogy by Anthony Ryan. This is a beast. Like, you can use them instead of weights. There you go. So my husband will not stop raving about this series. I've also seen it a couple of times on BookTube, but not very often actually, but it is well known and loved within the fantasy genre. It is a huge epic fantasy story. It follows a character called Valen, who I think we meet as a young boy. He trains as an assassin of some kind, I think. So pretty typical fantasy fare, but from everything I understand, this is grimdark and it is hella dark and it is really, really good. So I'm excited to get to that one, and I'm excited for my husband to stop nagging me about it. He's got no respect for the TBR. That man just doesn't care. The other series that I've picked out is The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. So I have these two very pretty editions sitting on my shelf, going unread. I really need to remedy that. So this is another very beloved fantasy series. Everybody talks about this one, or loves it, or has read it and has opinions on it, and I just want to be a part of the conversation. This one follows Kvothe. I think that's how you say his name. I don't know. It's one of those typical fantasy names no one really knows for sure. Maybe people do and I just don't. I don't know. But either way, it follows him as he's giving us his memoir, I think. Each book, from what I understand, is a day of him recounting his life story. So obviously it's different elements of his life, but it's one day of him talking about it. I'm getting Interview with a Vampire vibes, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but make it fantasy. Now, I liked both of those books, so I really hope that I love this and the way that it's done. Apparently it's brilliant. Apparently everybody's really pissed off that he still hasn't finished it, so I mean that's a good sign, right? People must like it. So yeah, hopefully I will too. Both the Kingkiller Chronicles and the Raven Shadow trilogy are from my 21 in 21 list of books that I really want to read this year. So far I'm not even halfway through it. So girl better work. But I am going to do a video which will just go through the list of books that I've picked out for that. At this rate, it's probably going to be a review video rather than just telling you what they are. Won't get around to it till like December or whatever, but hey, yeah, hoping to read both of those series as a part of that. The list, just off the top of my head, I can tell you that it's also included the Dave Bag trilogy, which I've read, and the Poppy War series. There's loads of great stuff on there. All of them are books that I have heard lots about, seen everywhere, or have just been so interested in and wanted to get to for a really long time. So yeah, and all of them are 5-star predictions as well. So keep your eyes peeled on my channel for that. Eventually, who knows when, I'll do my best. There is more though. Wait there.
A few moments later.
I also need to read all of these. Yeah. So these are all library books that I really need to get to. Yeah, I need to get a handle on my library TBR. I think that's going to be the priority for the next couple of months, because obviously if I don't read them now, then will I ever? Because will I ever end up picking them back up? I don't know. So yeah, we're gonna take some affirmative action. To be fair, about 50% of my reading this year already has been library loans, whether that's physical library loans like the ones behind me or through the Libby app. I love my local library. We all need to support our local libraries if we want to keep them. This is not a library manifesto. It's not a call to arms. I'm just saying, like, you know, I can't feel too bad about it, you know? That's what I tell myself anyway. The thing is though, I do sleep surrounded by my physical books, like not in a weird way, like they're just, that's just where the shelves are. But like, I can hear them silently judging me at night. I need to get to the books on my own shelves too, so this has to get under control to get all these books, plus the others, plus all the others that I haven't even mentioned. I'm going to wrap it up there, but thank you as ever so much for watching. If you liked it, make sure you hit like and subscribe, ring the little bell for notifications as well so that you never miss a thing, and I will see you again soon. Bye. It's hot today. Like I'm having a Beyonce moment. I can't pull it off. Did I make that tea? Yeah, I did. What is happening with my mouth? Make words. My head hurts. Got to do like booktube training. Like, people are so inconsiderate. It's like they don't even know I'm filming YouTube videos. Chakra. Oh, big old lorry. Question 8 is your. I need to figure out a way to hold these. Hang on. Like that, I think. So both the Kingkiller Chronicles and the Raven Chalet I feel like Umbridge when I do that.